Hey everybody, a warm welcome to the Doodling Dino. My name is Josh Cotton. I'm a professional paleo artist and dinosaur expert, and today we're going to be drawing an animal called Ava. As I said, Ava, not any Latinized dinosaur name. That's because this is a new ceratopsian, a new horned dinosaur that hasn't officially been named yet, but it's pretty exciting. It's an almost complete specimen, including skin impressions of an animal that was found in Montana, and it is being put together, or has been put together recently, by Treebold Paleontology. They operate out of the Rocky Mountain Dinosaur Research Center in Colorado, and yeah, so that'd be an exciting opportunity to draw a new dinosaur and talk with you a little bit about how go through the process. Now, this particular dinosaur is going to be easier than most to draw new for a couple of reasons. Let's close that. For a couple of reasons, and that's because A, it's a ceratopsian, and we're very familiar with ceratopsian anatomy generally. Ceratopsian are the horned dinosaurs, things like Triceratops, Centrosaurus, Styracosaurus, and also almost the entire skeleton was found, which is super exciting. That almost never happens. And also exciting, probably even more exciting, is the new technology that is allowing the rest of the skeleton to be completed. It used to be in the past that if you had a skeleton of an animal that wasn't complete, then you just kind of make up the rest of the parts. Well, in this case, there were, since skeletons are symmetrical down the center, since they're a mirrored image of themselves from left to right, you've got an eye on your right, an eye on your left, hopefully, then you can mirror or copy one side over to the other. So what they did was, when they were missing a bone on the left side and they had it on the right side, then they would take a 3D scan of the bone, flip it in the computer, and then print it out in plastic and create a new version of that bone to put on the animal in the mount. So we're able to see most of the rest of the animal. So I've got a reference page that I put together for this animal, and that's one of the most important things starting off here. I can't show it to you because I don't own the images, but if you want to put your own reference page together, which I would highly recommend, would invite you to go to the official blog of the Rocky Mountain Dinosaur Resource Center lab, and that can be found at rmdrc.blogspot.com, and I'll link this particular post in the notes here so that you guys can go to it yourself. Okay, so without further ado, once you have your reference together, and it helps to have images of the full skeleton, images of the skulls, images of the limbs at different angles if you can, and the skull at different angles if you can, and especially what's called a skeletal. So a skeletal reconstruction are things that it's like a 2D drawing that is done from what's called an orthographic angle, so from the side, from the top, from the exact front, and allows you to get a good idea of the proportions. In this case, there's a guy by the name of Scott Hartman who did a skeletal reconstruction for this one. He's one of the best in the business, and he's got a lot of great resources on his website if you want to check out, skeletaldrawing.com. So, starting out here, the first thing I like to do is just to try to get a feel for the animal. So since this is a ceratopsian, it's going to be similar to drawing other ceratopsians. But I tend to do what's called a gesture drawing first. So very simple drawings that kind of hash out the proportions. So this isn't going to be my final drawing. This is kind of a stick figure version, so I can start to get a feel for what it looks like. Right now I'm just looking at Scott's reconstruction and getting a vibe for how it's put together. Got a big round rib cage. Ceratopsians are round. You can always kind of think of their torso as kind of a slightly elongated ball. They've got broad hips, toes coming down here. This isn't going to be spot on. I'm just kind of getting the feel for it. And then what I'm going to do is do a series of quick drawings called, again, gesture drawings that will allow me to figure out what pose or what gesture I want to put this animal in. So again, I'm looking at my reference, but I'm thinking, okay, give the ball for the center of the body and kind of the hips there. The neck, ceratopsian necks are actually longer than you would probably think. It's really easy to try to mount them too close to the torso. Now, Ava, they call her Ava because it's closely related to an animal called Avaceratops, but it looks like it's a different animal. There's some differences in the skull, things like it doesn't have a nose horn, but it's got those two horns above his eyes, his or her eyes. And okay, so this is kind of just a 3/4 angle pose. Nothing too exciting, but still wrapping my mind around what Ava should look like. So Ava is just a temporary name while they decide on what the species name should be, or possibly even the genus name. So, like a genus would be Tyrannosaurus, a species would be Rex. So, we'll see whether it's just a species, which is still exciting, or if it's a whole new genus. We'll find out. Now, Ava is also a juvenile dinosaur. So they estimate it was probably 3 or 4 years old at the time that it died. And you can tell that, get the question in the museum all the time of when I was working down at BYU of how can you tell how old a dinosaur is, or what was the oldest dinosaur, those sorts of things. And there's a number of things you can do, a lot of them having to do with what's called bone histology, meaning the structure of the bone. The bone of an old animal tends to look different than the bone of a young animal because bone changes as it grows, and also as we grow older, our bones fuse. When we're young, our bones are made more out of cartilage, and they're also more separate from each other, and as we get older they fuse together. Like I've got a 2-month-old son who is still having his bone structure solidify. How kids kind of have soft heads initially and funny shaped heads when they're in the hospital. That was totally him. He had a cone head. But same thing happened with dinosaurs. You can look at the bones and see how much fusion has taken place, how much the bones are sticking together, and that gives you a good indication of whether it's fully mature or not. And Ava is not fully mature. Again, they're estimating is around 3 or 4 years old. It had already attained a length of, let me double check here, of 3.5 meters long and 1.2 meters tall. Again, according to the museum blog. And so for those of you who like to think in feet, let's find out what that was in feet. Let's find out. I'm going to ask Siri. 1 second. I've got man Siri, so don't be alarmed. What is...
I'm not sure I understand.
Thanks, Siri. Okay. What is 3.5 meters in feet?
I'm on it.
He's on it.
3.5 meters converts to about 11.5 feet.
11.5 feet. You heard the man? He'll be around all week. Okay, so about 11.5 feet long, which is pretty exciting. Okay, so I'm kind of liking this standing up on a rise pose here, but also kind of like the thought that Ava's a juvenile, so maybe think of him playing. So I might, and also that frill. Does that seem big to you? You can let me know. Talk at the screen. I can hear you. No. Yeah, there we go. A little bit more juvenile proportion there. But the thing is, this might be the majestic leader of the herd roaring to tell everybody to move on to the next grazing ground. But that wasn't Ava. Ava was a juvenile. So let's figure out a pose where it's a little more playful. I'm going to hide this layer and make a new layer. I take a lot of time doing these quick little loose drawings, because these are really what makes the soul of your image. A lot of people like to focus on detail and scales, and those are important too. And I like scales and wrinkles as much as the next person. But what really gives the power to the image is what life there is in the drawing. So I'm doing a lot of quick bad drawings real quick to just kind of figure out where I want to go with this. Okay, so trying to do something more playful. Maybe Ava's galloping. Interesting thing about Ava, the horns are mounted pretty close together. And it's got kind of this high forehead here. Kind of like, if you ever seen longhorn cattle with kind of that odd way that the horns are mounted up above the face. Ava's kind of got that going on. Not as smooth a transition as a lot of the other ceratopsians. And also the horns are really interesting because, like in Triceratops, they kind of point out like this, But in Ava, they kind of angle a little bit together like this. It's kind of interesting. Not sure what the purpose of that is, if it's for display or because you got to look good for the ladies. Except for Ava wasn't yet, because Ava was a juvenile. Too young to date. Let's see. Okay, so this is a little more playful. I'm wondering if this is starting to look a little bit like it's doing the thriller, though. He, she. We'll call it a she, because Ava is a lady's name. Ava is actually, again, named. They're calling it Ava because it's very similar to Ava ceratops. And Ava was named after the wife of the or Ava ceratops was named after the wife of the discoverer, who's named Ava. So we'll just call this one a girl for now, for some simplicity's sake. So this is fun, and what I'd like to do is maybe have Ava chasing after a caddisfly. That seems like a playful thing to do. We'll put a dot in here. But the moment looks kind of like she's doing the thriller. If you've ever seen that music video. If not, that's your assignment. Go watch the thriller on Michael Jackson's Vivo on YouTube. Okay. We'll do some real simple ones. See how quick these are? Some of these are 30 seconds to to 2 minutes. For some reason I'm going for this bipedal rearing up. Or maybe she sees the caddisfly on the ground. And she's kind of looking at it. Got her limbs kind of sprawled out so that she can see this caddisfly on a rock. So what I'm doing here is a bit different from, if you were to see like a how to draw book. I'm not saying that you have to go step by step. Okay, if you want to draw Triceratops or you want to draw Ava, you need to draw a circle, and then you need to draw a square, and then you need to draw a cylinder, and then you need to draw another circle, and then you need to draw another square, and then you need to draw a triangle, and you need to draw a triangle, and you need to draw another circle, and do everything in an exact order. Like that's the way that you would see it in a how to draw book. But I think, if I were to approach it to say you need to copy exactly what I'm doing, it would kind of throw off my groove because I don't really draw like this. I think about all of these things, but I think more about the overall volume and energy of the animal as I work. So, everything is made up of circles, squares, triangles, and hearts. That's what my mom told me when I was 5, and I've never forgotten it. But here, instead of copying an image, we're going to talk a little bit more about the creative process and about how you study an animal, how you how you thumbnail things out and determine exactly what sort of feeling you want to the image, and showing you what my process is, so that you can come up with your own process, because it'll be different, and that's okay. But it's okay to copy my process for a while. I copied a lot of people moving my process, and I still copy people. If I'm always looking at artists who are better than I am, and trying to learn and grow from that. This one's kind of fun. Kind of romping, chasing after this caddisfly. Could even have some grass here, because started to get grass towards the end of the Cretaceous. Again, this is 77 million years ago. But don't draw grass if you're drawing like a Jurassic scene. Okay? Promise me. Because grass wasn't around back then. Yeah, dinosaurs. Flowering plants kind of evolved alongside the dinosaurs, but they weren't very prominent early on. There's debate as to when flowers originated and flowering plants, but they didn't really have any kind of prominence until later in the Cretaceous period. I like this one. What do you think? Should we go with this one, chasing the caddisfly? See, here's where I like pause, kind of like Steve from Blue's Clues, and we have like a dub over saying, "Yeah, Josh, that's what we should do." Except for I'm not editing this because I'm feeling lazy, so I'll just assume that you're there screaming at your computer screen. I don't need to delete that. I'll just copy this one. Another exciting thing about these gesture drawings, I could take this and copy it bigger, but since I'm working in Photoshop, now you would copy it bigger if you're drawing on paper, and most of the time I do draw on paper. I'm just drawing on Photoshop, so it's easier to record here, and honestly a little bit awkward for me. But since I got a gesture that I like, I figure why redo it? I'm going to paste it, and then we don't need that squiggle. I'm going to check real quick, make sure we had grass. It might not have been until more of the latest Cretaceous here. Grass. Origins of grass. I'm looking on my other screen here. Evolutionary history of grasses. Let's see. Big long paper. Let's see. First fossil grass. Dung reveals dinosaurs ate grass from Life Science. I think I read this one a little while ago. They found looks like some, they were guessing titanosaur dung, the big sauropod dung. They had grass in it, showing that some of these later dinosaurs ate grass. Earlier ones would not have been able to because they hadn't been invented yet. Let's see. I say invented, hadn't evolved yet. It says grass existed on Earth at least 10 million years earlier than was known. This is on Life Science, but based on new discovery in fossilized dinosaur dung. This one says fossilized grass phytolith extracted from 65-million-year-old dinosaur dung. So 65, this is 77, that's 8 million years earlier. You know what? We'll be speculative. We'll go for it. We'll give him grass, or maybe it'll be kind of nondescript. So that was a tangent, but what we're going to do is we're going to take this this undersketch that I did, or this gesture that I did, and turn it into an undersketch. So now when I say the word gesture, gesture, if you study art, is the simplest few lines that a form can be broken into. So this is a little bit beyond the simplest lines. The simplest line would probably be, this is what would be the main gesture of this object, and then You might have a couple more showing where their limbs are working. But essentially, these lines I just drew here, that's not the best example, but pretty much describes what's going on down here in terms of the flow of the energy, of the rhythm. So and that's what prevents a drawing from becoming stiff. If it flows along a line, instead of saying, okay, I'm going to draw a hip, I'm going to draw a leg, and I'm going to draw a knee, and I'm going to draw a calf, and I'm going to draw, and it and then especially you run into a problem if you say I'm going to draw the leg with, and then I'm going to say, okay, here's this muscle, here's the scales, here's all these scales, and then you get so absorbed in this, and then you move on to drawing the next thing, and you say, here I'm going to draw the knee, here I'm going to draw the ankle, and you get so absorbed that you get way off of your proportion. So what you want to do is you want to lay everything down in simple terms really quickly. And you'll learn as you progress in art that if you don't take care of your basic proportions very quickly, then it is extremely easy to slip into a situation where you get done with your drawing and you realize that everything's off, everything's wrong, you're all off proportion, and you don't want that. So here, I did the basic drawing. I'm going through and doing a little bit of refining of proportions. How proportions meaning how big something is compared to something else, and so the head is tilted a little bit this way, a little bit away from us, and figuring out how those two horns are working. Beautiful frill on this animal, by the way. It's interesting how there's these little bones called the epoccipitals. Some of them are bigger and some of them are smaller, and it's got a neat rhythm going. Now, rhythm in design refers to patterns of contrast. So pattern of light and dark could be a rhythm. Or here's a straight line. If I have a straight line, do a curve, and then continue the straight line, that's a rhythm. Just like in sound, a rhythm is succession of sound and silence, like in a drum beat. So a rhythm can be large and small. Here's large, small, small, large. That's a rhythm. A different rhythm would be medium, large, large, medium. It's just like music in design. You create interest with a rhythm, and God is the best at that in His designs in nature. And I never cease to be amazed looking at animals and looking at plants and looking at bones and looking at mountains. Talk about looking at artists better than I am. He's number one. There's people talk jokingly about having an art crush, somebody whose art that they love so much, and got a number of those, but I think God is probably my number one art crush. Just amazed every day. Okay. So, running into some issues here of Avaceratops, or I should say Ava. Ava has a proportionally pretty large beak compared to the rest of her face, and I've kind of got myself into a situation here where I haven't given enough space for it. So normally you do this with an eraser on paper, but I'm actually just going to shift that upward so that there's more room for her schnoz. No offense, Ava. Your big is beautiful. I have a big nose myself, but it's just for show. I can't really smell very good. I mean, I smell good, but my nose doesn't smell very good. Let's see. Okay. So I'm going to flip it backwards here. You can do this also by looking in a small hand mirror. Flipping it backwards to check how my composition is, and also to check for mistakes. It's an old painter's trick. If you flip something backwards, it's a lot easier to catch issues you wouldn't notice otherwise. Here, I'm going to grab my bone book here. One moment, I shall return. And we are back. I am back. Hope you're still here. But I don't blame you if you want to get a snack. I want to get a snack. But I won't bore you with that. So I'm opening up my bone book, which you can't see, but it's a collection of reference that I've gathered from books, from the internet, from photography that I've taken, and compiling things into one place so that when I'm doing a piece of dinosaur artwork, I can look at reference. So I've compiled a reference page for Ava, but I've got separate reference pages for ceratopsians generally. And there's actually what I'm going to be using, and I would highly recommend this resource. I'm going to make sure I get the URL right. Go to my blog, which, by the way, my blog is thedoodlingdino.tumblr.com. Check it out. So, okay. So there's a fantastic ceratopsian anatomy reference set for free at a place called dinoanatomy.com. So it's dino, D-I-N-O, hyphen anatomy.com. And probably the coolest anatomical reference I've found anywhere. It's got a Styracosaurus, which is another ceratopsian, and goes around and shows all the muscles and shows it at different angles and shows all the bones, and everything's labeled at different angles. Would highly recommend it. And I'm pulling that out just to reference for myself a little bit. Okay. Got to do the sound effects. Okay. Now this is still the underdrawing, and you know this can take a while, but so appreciate you being patient and bearing with me. Yeah, you know I can draw dinosaurs out of my head. I've been drawing some Avaceratops out of my head in my sketchbook for the last couple of days since the animal came out, but whenever I can, it's always better to use reference. Doesn't make you a better artist not using reference. I mean, that can be a good exercise, but like the best, the pros always use reference because that makes it so our stuff is accurate. And also, there's things that you can pull from reference from life that you wouldn't be able to pull from your head. You know, you got to educate your imagination, as they say. It's there's only so much in your imagination. You got to keep going out and pulling more stuff into your head as frequently as you can. So another thing I'm going to do here, recent evidence shows that probably most ceratopsians had little quills on their on their tail and lower back they inherited from their Psittacosaur ancestors, or if not Psittacosaur ancestors, ancestors related to Psittacosaurs. So putting those in. And again, this is the underdrawing, so this will be refined as we go along. Actually, I'm liking that angling of them maybe a bit better. Let's erase that. It's always okay to erase. Okay, yeah, I'm kind of liking the swoop of that. Okay, you know what I'm noticing here that I'm doing wrong? I'm kind of giving Ava a hip structure like a theropod, a saurischian dinosaur, so I'm going to smooth that out. Saurischian dinosaurs, like theropods, like T-Rex, they have a pubic boot pointing forward and an ischium pointing backward. In ornithischian dinosaurs, like Ava, they've got their ischium pointing backwards, the pubis also pointing backwards, and sometimes a process of the ischium pointing forwards, but you're not going to get that same bump down there. We'll get a little bit of a bump back here. Okay. So Ava's looking kind of scared right now. We have to find a way as we go along to make her look a little more happy, because it's the caddisfly that should be scared because she's getting chased by this 3.5 meter ceratopsian. Now I'm noticing, I keep talking about proportions. I'm noticing that here the hindquarters are getting a bit thin. So these are, just adjustments that you make along the way. And it's good to make them early on so you don't have to do it once you've done detailing. I don't know how much detailing we're going to do in this particular drawing. It'll probably finish as some sort of sketch. Yeah, that's a little better. Make the legs slightly more long and lanky. Turn to my reference page. Okay. That's a little better, and also, makes it a little more dynamic. She's reaching up a little bit higher. I might move this foot now too, now that the legs are a bit longer. And I'm kind of imagining back behind where that knee would go. And drop down. There. Now that works anatomically, but I'm not sure if I like the feel of it. I think I'm going to delete that foot and just think for a minute. I think I like that a little bit better. And thinking about the front limbs here too for a moment. Place the elbow a little bit farther back. Again, referring to the skeletal. Photographs of skeletons are great for determining volumes, but there's nothing like a good skeletal drawing from like Scott Hartman or Gregory Paul to help you determine proportions. highly recommend both of those guys, and I anticipate I'll probably recommend them in just about every video. Both of them. Okay. Something like this might even make the belly hang even a little bit lower. Okay. Make sure we get to make sure it goes bump there. This protuberance of the hip. So this is all very rough and loose now, but you can see how it's gradually refining. Slowly but surely. Okay. Referring back to my reference. You can share it, check and share. Thank you for being patient with me while I flip through things here. Hopefully figure out my groove more as we go along in future videos, and I might work a little bit faster. I tend to work a little bit faster when I'm going on my own, but drawing and talking at the same time is a little bit different challenge. Okay, I'm saving the last dance for you. Okay, so this underdrawing I think is okay at this point. Flipping it, I'm seeing the composition is a little bit front heavy. So I'm thinking of figuring out how, actually up here there's going to be some description and things like that, and that's going to fill out the composition by quite a bit. So we won't worry about adding too much in the back at this point. Okay. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this layer light. Now if you're doing this on paper, you would probably want to draw lightly in the first place, or use like a blue pencil. A lot of animators will do that underneath. So this was all the underdrawing, and now I'm going to work on top of it a little bit cleaner. Okay. Moving over the top, these clean lines. Again, ceratopsian necks tend to be longer than you would think. So always keep that in mind. And that extra bit of length in the neck, helps them place it where they need to put it when they're either fighting with each other or going against a predator. Okay, other thing with ceratopsians, they've got 5 toes, but something that I have never, ever, ever, ever seen a dinosaur toy do right, and rarely see a drawing or a sculpture do right, is that the first 2 toes on a ceratopsian do not have nails on them. There's hooves on the inner 3, but these first 2 are nubbins. They may have even been kind of consumed in just kind of a sack of flesh there, I usually kind of add a little bit of a nubbin to indicate that they're there, but remember that. Don't give your ceratopsian too many toenails. Because you know what happens when you have too many fingers. Inigo Montoya comes after you. Zoom in here. Do a little bit closer work on the face. Isn't that just a beautiful curve to her nose? I'm going to add just a little bit of extra on here for the beak, just a little bit. Like you look at the bones of an animal in a museum, and the bones of the claws or bones of a horn, they actually would have been covered in life by keratin, the same stuff that your fingernails are made out of, and that would extend the length. In claws or horns, a lot of times that can extend the length anywhere from a third to a half extra. So I don't know that I'm going to extend it that far on these particular horns since they angle together. And it looks like Scott Hartman is shown in his black outline that he doesn't do that either. Thought about extending them, but then they'd kind of run into each other, which would be odd and not very fun. You know, it'd be kind of like an ingrown toenail on your face. There's an image for you. That's why you come to watch, right? So you can be. Yeah, I'll stop there. And let's see. Now the frill here, come down underneath. There's a squamosal bone. And there's kind of a little gap in there. And a gap in here behind the jugal bone, up above the jaw where the ear would be situated, behind the jugal and above the quadrate. And her cheekbones, her jugal bones, are going to jut out here because ceratopsians almost all have these extensions to their cheek. So the challenge when working on top of your underdrawing is to prevent it from going stiff. So I'll do my best here to help maintain that life and energy that we worked so hard to get earlier. Again, that life and energy that happens from drawing a bunch of small ones quickly. There's her eye sitting in her eye socket. Let's see. For some reason it's not wanting to select my tiny brush. I'm going to go back to my tiny brush. There we go. So these little bumps along the frill, these are called epoccipitals. Actually, that would, yeah. So that means above or upon the occipital. The occipital is a bone at the back of the skull. It's a word for the day, which I challenge you to use in conversation. Not even a conversation about dinosaurs, just a conversation. You're like, tell someone I'm thinking of growing an epoccipitал fringe. Right? Talking about a weird hairdo. I don't know. Mullet. Actually, I think that would be a mullet. The scientific name for a mullet. Okay, see, I'm tightening up here. I'm moving too slow. I need to be loose and quick again. I'm going to shake out my arm. Do some arm circles with my right arm. It's so important to stay loose. Because if you're not loose, you're stiff, and if you're stiff, your drawing is dead. If your drawing is dead, nobody likes your drawing. If nobody likes your drawing, nobody loves you. Nah, we'll still love you. We'll still love you. Because we are a supportive community. Let's see. See, that's coming along. I'm using my lights and darks, making the line thick in some places and thin in others. Dark in some places and light in others. That's rhythm. And what looks good that way is just something that kind of comes with time and practice. Okay, so here we have that tuberosity, that protuberance coming off at the end of the hip. You notice a lot of these lines, I'm trying to do them in one stroke from when possible. Now, I'm not drawing from the wrist, I'm drawing from the shoulder and the elbow, because that allows for a much smoother, more appealing line. If I'm drawing from the wrist, if I tried to do that same line from the wrist, it would look like, because your wrist can only move so far, and then you get, you used to say in animation courses, if you're trying to draw a circle with your wrist, you get the hairy meatball effect, especially if you try to do it in little, because you're worried about making a mistake and you do it in little bits, then you really get the hairy meatball effect. Here, we'll add some more hair on the inside of our meatball. That's the kind of meatball you get when you go to like a restaurant run by cats. Yeah, I know that's gross. Okay, one thing that helps often is to do a thicker line on the bottom and a line that gets thicker before going behind something. That's a quick tip to ways to vary your line weight. Whip, whip. Okay, and work under the armpit here. A little dark because the light is occluded, meaning it's covered under there. Smudge it a little bit. You can smudge with your finger or with a tortillon or a smudger. I just call them smudgers. But you can get a smudger at an art store, or you can make one yourself by just rolling up a piece of printer paper. Okay, feeling the back of the elbow here. Notice I'll hover for a moment, but then like decide on a line and make the mark. Because if you hesitate, it shows, and if you're not confident, it shows. And half of what makes your drawing look good is confidence. I mean, a good part of it is skill, but a good part of skill is confidence, and a good part of what makes it look good beyond skill is confidence. So be confident. If it's wrong, if you mess up big. We don't want any little mess ups around here. We want huge. Be proud of those mess ups. So Ava is a primitive member of a group called the Centrosaurines, which until very, very recently, and you know what, I'm noticing some proportional issues here again. For shame that I didn't catch that earlier. Or maybe it's just, oh yeah, it's my angle. Yeah, I'm still off. Let's see. So Ava, as I was mentioning, is a primitive member of a group called the Centrosaurs. Centrosaurians. And the Centrosaurs were interesting animals. They're related to Triceratops, but instead of having two long brow horns and one long nose horn, and one short nose horn, and this is Ava's kind of the exception to the rule and part of why she's primitive. They're able to tell she's a centrosaur from other reasons aside from the horns, but generally, ceratopsians have, or ceratopsids, like Triceratops. Here's the frill, here's the skull, here's the schnoz, that's the technical term. So ceratopsians tend to have two long horns above the eyes and one short horn here. And aside from Triceratops, they tend to have bigger, longer frills with holes in them, Whereas centrosaurs tend to have a bit shorter frill with some crazy ornamentation on it. Shorter brow horns. We'll make them even that short. And a big, long nose horn. So that's like Centrosaurus, Styracosaurus, Monoclonius, except for Monoclonius I think is now considered Centrosaurus. So all those guys. But until recently, all Centrosaurs had that layout, except for animals like Avaceratops, or yeah, animals like Ava, this Ava, and animals like, I believe, Regaliceratops just recently was a centrosaur that actually looked more like a ceratopsian, but there's other parts of its anatomy that they're able to look at and say, nope, this is a centrosaur. Figuring out how to transition between the scales and the beak, that's always a challenge. I'm going to make a fine line here. I'm going against my own advice. I'm making hairy meatball lines. I'm sorry. I'm just a man. I'm fallible. No excuses, Josh. No excuses. Okay. Yeah, this area is still not working. Try to move it again. My one of my teachers in college, a guy named Ryan Woodward, who if you're in the animation industry, you probably know who that is. It's kind of a big deal. No, he's a great artist, and I remember I interviewed him once, asking some questions, his wisdom and his experience in years as a professional artist, and I asked him, so what separates a good artist from a bad artist? And what he said kind of surprised me. It wasn't that you don't make mistakes, but instead he said, a good artist has the ability to recognize error, know when something's wrong so you can fix it, because we're gonna make mistakes all the time. It's half the fun. But gotta fix them. That's That's the key. I say an error does not become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. Okay. Yeah, I've got all kinds of proportional issues with this thing. The reason I'm hesitating to bring it higher like it needs to be is because I've made the lower jaw too thick back there. There we go. That's closer to its point where the joint actually should be. Thank you for bearing with me. Beyond that, I think the skull actually should also be slightly bigger. Just slightly, ever so slightly. Just a little more. Again, referencing Scott Hartman's skeletal drawing. Skeletaldrawing.com. Scott Hartman's skeletaldrawing.com and any book by Gregory Paul. Particularly, the Princeton Field Guide to Dinosaurs has a lot of excellent skeletals in it. And also Predatory Dinosaurs of the World. That's really the book I learned to draw dinosaurs from. It's not a drawing book, it's a book about the animals, but I used to sit there and copy his stuff over and over again. Not ashamed to admit it. The man's a genius. And then, you know, you copy your heroes and you gradually figure out your personal taste. Okay. So that's getting a bit closer. It's difficult because he's got, you know, Aviceratops has, you know, these horns, and it's got a rise where its eyes are, and then the where the schnauz comes off, which is different from some of the other ones. And it's turning away here. I'm thinking I should even bring that higher. Oh, actually, you know what the issue is? Probably partially that it needs to go higher, but also partially that I've got the frill isn't coming in far enough. So this is why you need a reference, because otherwise you get these things wrong. Let's see. I'll probably even rotate the frill, the rest of the frill up a bit here. Changing the center of rotation there. There we go. There we go. Starting to get proportions that are closer to correct. And I'm going to move this eye up a bit, because the eye is a bit low, just a bit. So I'm doing what I call right now noodling, which is kind of playing with small details when I really should move on. But you know, the eye placement is important. Okay. Okay. And look at all these places I was off. And take the horns and actually point them more forwardy. Point them, rotate them. Yeah, here we're getting somewhere. I know it looks gross right now, but promise. It will be worth it. Now, if you're not looking at reference right now, it's going to be tough to tell that this is helping. But yeah, look up the Rocky Mountain Dinosaur Resource Center blog, and you'll see what I mean. Okay, there we go. There we go. Yeah, and I flipped it once to show you guys that you flip it, but I've actually been pretty consistently. You hear that clicking, picking up a mirror and holding it up to my eye and flipping it backwards. I actually even carry a mirror with me with my sketchbook so that I can do that. Not everybody does that, but I find it helps me. Yeah, the head was initially turned farther, I think, but I think the rotation has migrated. You know, the best way to describe the way that forehead slopes in. Okay. Zoom back out again. Okay. Yeah, it's getting better, getting stronger. I think I may have also made the rib cage too long. What I'm going to do actually I think the issue is that I've got this this line isn't doing the right curve. So I'm going to shift it forward a bit. Ceratopsians have these high vertebrae over their backs, and it kind of slopes up, so they can have big strong muscles there. I think I'm going to add even a little more neck muscle up here. There. That feels a little bit better. Okay. These leg muscles here. I was thinking about the muscles underneath and the bones underneath and how that's going to pull the skin around. Where there's going to be places where there's tightness and tension. Now, I mentioned earlier that on the ceratopsian front foot, you only see 3 of the 5 toes on the surface, or at least only 3 of the 5 toes have hooves. On the back feet, there are 4 toes, and all of them have hooves. So you don't have to worry about which ones do and which ones don't. A little bit of a break. Although it is kind of strange that they have a different number of toes on the front feet than on the back feet. Although it turns out in the animal kingdom we're kind of weird because most animals actually do have a different number of front and hind toes. At least that's the norm for reptiles. So notice I'm dropping in these quick lines that kind of describe muscle forms. That helps add to the gesture of the figure and also describes the muscle and also helps describe the roundness of the figure. Makes it 3D. Because you see, before we had fancy glasses in the movie theater, you had to describe 3D with your drawing. Okay. So we've got that inner toe that's short, slightly longer. That's the first toe. Slightly longer second toe. Slightly longer third toe. Okay. Just kind of leg swinging in here, so I'm going to add some wrinkles there, but it's also stretching out here. So I'm going to add some wrinkles stretching from here. See how suddenly that everything feels more saggy and wrinkly? You know, we humans don't like so much to be saggy and wrinkly, but I'll tell you what, saggy and wrinkly is cool looking and fun, I think. I love saggy and wrinkly dinosaurs. So much character. Can't wait to be a saggy and wrinkly old man. I'll make faces in the mirror every morning and draw them. It'll probably put me away. Let's see. I'm adding some of that shading. So these are the quadriceps, the iliotibial muscles coming down, stretching from the hip to the knee here. We got the extensors on the front, the flexors on the back of the calf. I feel like I have lost a little bit of life and character here. ponder on what's causing that. Could help to have more interesting eye. Already that's a little slightly more playful. Now, it's tough, but it's really helpful to try to make your dinosaur eyes animal eyes as opposed to human eyes. At least for me, I mean, you can recognize emotions that we can identify with in animal eyes because they feel a lot of the same things that we do. But I feel like if too many people put straight up human eyes into their animal drawings, and it just turns it into a cartoon, that really bugs me. So here I'm giving him a really wide iris. So a lot of animals you don't see a ton of the white of the eye. That's one way to help. Now technically, chasing after a caddisfly, wouldn't be able to see directly in front of her nose because ceratopsian eyes tend to point out to the side, which is typical of how a lot of herbivorous animals work, how a lot of prey animals work. Because that way you have a wider field of view and you can see a predator coming easier. Less 3D vision, but messes with your depth perception, but it's worth it because you're able to get running before you see, before the predator's on top of you. Predators, on the other hand, tend to have their eyes facing forward, so they can see 3D, and so they can chase something down. So at this point, I'm going to merge these two drawings down. I'm going to hide the underdrawing real quick, see what that looks like. I might actually decrease the opacity on the underdrawing farther. That's 23, that's 19%. I don't think we want quite all the way down. Let's give a 23%. Is that where we started? Yeah, I do believe that is where we started. So let's decrease it a bit. Okay, so I'm going to merge these two layers together, these two, the drawing layer and the underdrawing layer. So now that when I work on one, I'm affecting them both. Show a little bit of depression there for the nuchal ligaments. That's what they call the ligaments that run along your spine back behind your head. Okay. Okay, I'm going to get some real fine lines in here, just to show that that beak means business. I'm talking incorporated business, none of this LLC business. Actually, let's bring this forward a little bit because it's looking to me like it should be placed farther forward. It's on the skeleton. Okay. Actually, that makes her look a little less scared too, I think. Putting a few scales in. I'll do that. See if I can put this in here to kind of indicate that the nose is narrowing and a change in planes between those two surfaces. If I'm not careful, I'm going to start painting here. That's not the intention. I might do a painting for you guys another day, but don't intend to paint today. But just that little touch of value, that little touch of dark, makes a big difference into how I perceive that surface. It gives it dimension all of a sudden. Whip, whip, whip. Okay. Let's figure out how we want to transition into that horn. So, Todd Marshall told me once when I was a teenager, a long time ago, when I wrote to him and I was asking about how he handled his scales. He was one of my heroes growing up. But he said that he would study real animals and that he would be careful to make sure that whatever he did in terms of scales would flow with the form of the animal. So you notice here as I'm working around this eye, I'm making sure that the lines flow out from the eye, that there's a sense to it. Because if you look at animals and the way their scales work, and I'm not going to draw every scale on this one because this is a sketch, If you look at animals in the way that scales work, they're not thrown on there haphazardly. They work with the form of the animal, and there's definite lines that you can see. You can see usually there's lines radiating out from the eyes, and then you'll get patterns that radiate out kind of like that. You'll be able to see the lines in the scales or the fur. And then those lines will encounter lines coming up back from this way in the scales or the fur. It all flows. It's like scaly water, which sounds really gross, but it does. And that's part of what makes them beautiful. Ava was actually found with skin impressions, which is pretty exciting. Not very often you find skin impressions. They were found over her hips, and there were these big hexagonal scales. hexagonal six-sided. Dinosaur scales tend to be in these hexagonal patterns, kind of like honeycomb. You find that in a lot of places in nature. And that's because naturally they're the most efficient way for things to crack and also to have storage space, which is why bees have that shape. Not the bees themselves, they're hives, honeycombing. Okay. This is going to be a long video. I apologize. Appreciate you sticking with me, though. And if you want to skim through, that's okay, too. I need to practice these so I can do them faster. And I do them faster when I'm working myself, but I'm working with you now. So I need to get better for you. It's kind of going through. Here's what sounds really exciting to me, once this spinning wheel stops, is getting inside that armpit. There we go. Oh, doesn't that just pop the form nice there? Okay, there we go. And most people don't get excited about getting inside a dinosaur armpit, but I'm a nerd, so. It's probably more value than I want. So I'm trying to keep this as a sketch. Show a little bit of form change turning around there, but yeah. Oh yeah. Let's see. That was a Kool-Aid Man reference, in case you couldn't tell. I don't know if he does that anymore. You guys watch television. Used to be that there would be some kids who were bored, on these Kool-Aid commercials. Then all of a sudden the wall would bust in, and the Kool-Aid Man would say, "Oh yeah," because he just brought the party, and also like busted through a wall. So personally, like, I'd be excited to see the Kool-Aid Man, but I'd be really worried about what my parents would think about the busted down wall. He doesn't have much respect for other people's property. I know that's the kind of friend should be hanging with. Let's see. Appreciate your patience with my tangents. Let's see. Maybe give a little tongue hanging out. Ugh. Because this is fun. She's chasing a bug. maybe squealing a bit. Hey mom, I found a bug. And the mom's like, you are an herbivore. Don't need to eat bugs. It's so much fun, you should try it. You guys ever do that as a kid? Eat bugs? My little sister did. We always give her a hard time about it. An animal that eats bugs is called an insectivore. Like normally you think of animals as carnivorous or herbivorous or omnivorous, meaning they eat anything. But there are other types of diets that are named. Again, one of those is insectivorous, an animal that focuses on eating insects, because someone's gotta. There are animals that are piscivorous, which means they eat fish. When I was in college, I subsisted mainly on Hot Pockets. I don't know what you call that. Probably in a few more years there will be a scientific term. I think the term is unhealthy. But especially if you don't like heat them up first. I was frequently in a hurry. My wife has made me swear off eating frozen Hot Pockets. So blessed to have her around. She takes good care of me. Okay, this is starting to look okay. Starting to look like a dinosaur. Stretch. What could be fun is if, maybe she stumbled onto like a whole nest of bugs, Actually, there were bees around back then. Maybe she stumbled onto some bees. It's kind of fun to make up these stories as you go. Add some shoots coming out of there. And actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to select these. I'm going to make the environment. You can't tell here, but it's now on a separate layer from the rest of the painting, or of the sketch. Drawing. So it makes it a little bit simpler to work with. I'm going to do a dirty trick here. I'm going to open up a new document because I don't want to spend time detailing a bunch of bees. I'm going to draw one bee. Look up some ref for a Cretaceous bee here. I know bees were around. Ooh, magpie walking by my window. Dinosaur walking by my window. Hanging out in the yard. Okay. See what these guys look like. Okay. The bees have actually been around since the Jurassic. And I'm not going to get real specialized with this bee or make him particularly detailed. I'm just going to make sure to get basic bee form here. This is going to be a brush that I'm going to duplicate and just like draw these bees flying around. I'll look up a bee in flight because Google is my friend. Just see what they look like in flight, modern bees. Okay. Actually, the wings should be mounted up a little bit farther, closer to his back. Okay. I'm going to make this just a little bit darker. Yeah. So it doesn't look very good right now. But hopefully in a second will be a good good brush for us. Image, or actually we're going to go to edit. Define brush preset. I'm going to call it B. Gonna adjust. Here, let me bring this brush panel down where you can see it. So right now it's all spaced together. I'm going to separate them out. I'm going to do some scattering. There we go. Already starting to feel a bit like a swarm. Do some shape dynamics to make them bigger and smaller. There we go. I'm going to jitter the angle a bit, jitter their thickness a bit. And we'll see what that looks like over with Ava. This is what is known as constructive laziness. Okay, let's go back and try it out. Yeah. Not bad, not bad. I think we made an okay brush. What do you think? Much better than drawing all these guys out. I'm just figuring out exactly how many of these we want and what shape they should be in. Transform that, warp. Maximum warp, Captain. It might be better just to draw them. As I say, you always need to do the sound effects. They're in my mouth. Poor Ava. I don't know, this looks like more of a dangerous situation than I would have liked. I hope she's not allergic, because there's nothing sadder than a dinosaur with hives. No pun intended. Hmm. That's kind of fun. That's kind of fun. Okay, let's go back to, we'll actually work a little bit more on the environment. Call that So these are, I think, coming out of a rotted log that they were building their nest in that Ava just stepped on. Poor girl. You ever stumble onto a bee's nest? That awful moment of realization. I don't think I ever really. Actually, I've never been stung, so I don't know if I'm allergic. But I mean, I've dealt with bees before, or wasps. Took out a wasp nest once when I was helping a friend. But I've had the good fortune never to be stung. Actually, I'm not sure if bees at this point had stings. I think they were stingless and then had stings later on, if I remember right. Or actually, you know what I'm thinking of? Thinking of mosquitoes. Mosquitoes actually weren't around as we know them during the time of the dinosaurs. So it's one of a few reasons why the premise of Jurassic Park sadly doesn't work. Because you can't get dinosaur DNA from a mosquito because they never coexisted. Lucky dogs, those dinosaurs. Didn't have to deal with mosquitoes. Suppose though, if you're going to be like dealing with tyrannosaurs and having to deal with an asteroid later on and all those things, you're entitled to a few perks. Maybe we can let them not have mosquitoes. Gonna bring the ground forward a bit so she's not just dancing on a line. Technically, it depends on how tall we want to be, but the line should be way back here for a horizon. But if we're going to do that, how about we do it on a separate layer and we'll do it lighter. I'm going to do it back here like this for now. Okay. Okay. It's our horizon line, and we'll see what happens when we dim that. Just to kind of make it an indication back there rather than be particularly prominent. Yeah, I'm going to come back to Ava here. I don't know that I'm quite buying her hind right foot. Check something else. So yeah, so they weren't caddisflies, they were bees, and it was a sad day in Ava's life. Looking where I can see this diagram bigger, because in my bone book, I accidentally made it pretty small. Or not small, pretty dark. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, so we got the shank here. I think these mostly just need to be kind of moved up a bit. And do that. Wah, 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 wah. Wah, wah, wah. It's like the pixels are empty. It's because I'm on the wrong layer. There we go. And that's tangenting a bit with this line, unfortunately, so let's fix that. Just gonna make slightly dark here so that we can continue that line, but not make it compete here and turn into a real tangent problem. A tangent is when a line runs into another one in such a way that it's difficult to tell the depth. So here's a circle. There's a line coming off straight from here. It's a tangent. So you can't tell which is in front, the circle or the line. So if I were to draw a line there, that would be a tangent on the toe. You want to avoid those for the most part in art. There's exceptions, but like if you're trying to flatten something or draw attention to it in a certain way, then you can use them. But some light. Yeah, I like that, brightening up her eyes a bit. She's a bright-eyed youth. Just figuring life out. Just big enough to get into trouble. That's how I feel a lot of the time. Going through and we've done put a lot of dark in. I'm going to put a little bit of light in. Oh, we're on the wrong layer. Suppose it's too late to apologize for that, my friend. Make sure I can do. Okay. You've actually technically got kind of a tangent going on back here too. So I'm just going to bring that back in very slightly. Heck, I could even scoot it down a couple ticks. Not liking that placement though. It's really one of the things. So the higher the horizon line, the higher your perspective and the smaller an object appears. The lower the horizon line, the larger your object appears and the smaller you are. Yeah, I kind of liked the initial placement. It's just how's that? What do you guys think, Steve? Or I said, I mean, yeah. What do you guys think? And then I was thinking you responded to me like Steve from Blue's Clues. Putting it back in its original spot. Maybe a little bit lower. Maybe a little bit lower. Yeah, I'm actually liking it lower, even though it kind of makes her bigger than I want to make her, because she's a kid. And at every point there's something to tangent with. Makes it kind of hard. That's the spot though. Make sure the horizon line isn't too terribly straight. You still want it to feel organic, and if things are too straight, then they start to look like they're man-made. Though there are places with really straight horizons, like Kansas. If you ever get the opportunity to drive through Kansas. Kind of eerie how straight the horizon is there. But I'm not quite liking some of these curves that I'm creating either, so I'm trying to adjust them down. Yeah, some mountains, some more mountains. Is that working? No, Steve. My name is Josh, not Steve, for the record. Though I do draw with crayons sometimes, like Steve. Okay. Well, I'm going to bow this upward. Warp. Bow. Yeah, it's getting a little bit nicer. leave it there, and then erase there. I am noodling. I should not be noodling this much. Okay. Might actually even go back to the bees here real quick, because now that's kind of tangenting with the curvature of the bees. It's frustrating when stuff acts like that. Whoa. We want little bees. We do not want ginormous bees terrorizing the Cretaceous. Yeah, I like that shape. Okay. Okay, all right. I think we're getting close, ladies and gentlemen. We are getting close. Go back to my sketch brush. Describe that a little bit better. Make sure he's got nice thick pads on his toes. I don't know how much detail we're going to go into down here. Oh, you know what I'm doing? I'm doing it again. I need to go back into the Ava layer. Okay. Let's try this again. Delete that work that I did so I can really do her foot right here. Okay. Feet can be rough sometimes, both metaphorically and literally speaking. Okay. I know that we're going to do a ton of detail in there. Yeah, you know what? That doesn't need to rise out of there because they're on the same footing. See what I did there? Okay. Put these down where they belong. Looks like I'd lost some darkness in my color, so I had to resample there to pick the color again from the darkest spot in the image. Because I do things like that and lose my dark color. Okay. Ava. She's a pretty girl. I love dinosaurs. Let's see. A little more volume there to the rib cage. A little more, maybe show a couple of ribs back here, just to show that there's bone underneath there. Maybe not that much. You have his beautiful nose. Beautiful because it makes her unique. She doesn't know she's beautiful, but that's what makes her beautiful. Experimenting with giving her some markings radiating out from her eyes. I think I'm not going to do that for now. If I were to paint it up, I might do that, but I think rather than do that, I'm going to focus on keeping the form in there. Darkened it up a bit too much over there, and that made everything else seem like it was lighter than it should be. Okay. Well, high forehead. The Elizabethans would be proud. I think it was the Elizabethan era. It used to be, you know how like today there's that weird thing going around where they say that the ideal of beauty is for like ladies' thighs not to touch. I didn't realize this was a thing till my wife told me. So like that's what all the magazines are doing now on women torturing themselves with exercises. Well, the torturous beauty thing of the Victorian or the Elizabethan era was to have a high forehead. Don't know why. Don't know why they latched onto that particular ideal, but it was a high forehead. And to appear like they had a high forehead, it would actually pluck the hairs at the tops of their heads, so they made kind of this artificial male balding pattern type thing. The thing is, you might look like you had a high forehead if you right after you did this, but then the hair would start growing back in, and they had like weird forehead stubble. It's gross. There's actually some rather amusing paintings that were made of nobles of that time, noble ladies with kind of bald-looking foreheads, and then you could see like the stubble starting to come back in. So yeah, if fashion crazes, they come and go. and you know they're going to make fun of it in 20 years. So just be yourself. Don't stress about what people are saying or thinking. Be yourself and do the right thing, which is also not always fashionable, but is always better. See how I turned that weird tangent around into the moral of today's story? Merge the environment layer down here. Okay. So we're getting pretty close on Ava, or at least don't know that I want to take her too much farther at this point. Maybe on another day. Who knows? Might come back and paint her if you guys are interested in that. Let me know in the comments. Find these lines a little bit. Nice, crisp, clear, clean epoxipitals. It's almost an alliteration. Okay. I might actually darken things here on this bottom layer just to distinguish that we do have a ground plane. So it's taken a minute to catch up, but okay, now that brush stroke's really taken a minute to catch up. There we go. One more glaze there, just because things can tend to get darker as they move forward. And do another glaze in the back. What do you think? Does that help or does that not help? Does that help or does that not help? So hit it, show it, hit it. You know, we actually might do better without that background thing altogether. All that time we spent fussing over it. But, you know, sometimes if it works better without something, even if you spend a lot of time on it, it's better to do without. Do what you got to do to make it a better image, even if it means letting go of something that you like. That, my friends, is called killing your darlings. That's what they say in art and literature when you get rid of a piece of it that you really like, so that the whole can look better. Like if it might be something nice, but it's just not working for this particular piece. Giving her a shadow. because she's not a vampire. Is it vampires that don't have shadows, or was it reflections? I think it was reflections. What doesn't have a shadow? Okay. Think we're getting close, guys? Yeah, Steve. Let us go. We're hungry and tired. I'm hungry and tired, and I need to go to the bathroom. Suffering through it with you. I'm doing it all in one shot so that I can just get it out to you today. Maybe I'll have time to edit other videos later. But I find that causes a huge delay in my getting it online. Maybe I'll have more discipline about that in the future. But in the meantime, you're getting this grotesquely long, uncut version. Woo. Okay. One last line here, just to make sure the foot is distinguished from the hand, or the forefoot is distinguished from the hind foot. It's all about clarity. And you know, after I post this, I'll probably notice some things that would want to improve, and you're probably seeing some of those things already, because you have fresh eyes compared to mine. I've been absorbed in trying to make it what I want it to be, but just giving it one last moment of scrutiny. Like that thick bottom line. We'll thicken it here. Make sure she's got some good tail wrinkles here, some wrinkles coming across the thigh here. Do we really need that? Redo it, but lighter. That feels stripy. I might just leave her thighs alone. Say as I keep messing. Okay. Well, that's probably all we have time for today. But I really appreciate you stopping in and watching. And here, I'm going to sign it real quick. Check this out. Bloop. And this will show up on my blog pretty soon. The final image at the doodlingdino.tumblr.com, or tumblr.com/thedoodlingdino. I think it's that first one. Regardless, if you look up the Doodling Dino, you'll find my work, or if you look up my name, you'll find my work. I'm also at joshcotton.com, and of course here on YouTube, the Doodling Dino. Thanks for taking the time. As always, be excellent to each other, and yeah, just do that. Talk to you guys later. Bye.